Hi, and welcome to this Turner Training video for the Back to Earth Collective Composting Program. This will be a quick introduction to the turning equipment and the process just to get you familiar with it. So to start out, let's open up our tool rack. You will receive the combination after you have completed the training. And you will see that here we have our transfer shovel and our pitchfork. So our pitchfork will always be used for turning the fresh bin. It does a good job of digging into the material. The transfer shovel, on the other hand, is helpful once your material is mostly broken down. If you're trying to get to the very bottom of an aging bin when you're turning, or when you're removing the material at the end of the composting process. So note that they hang in this particular orientation, and that there's a little sign there that indicates where they go when they're done. So with that, we will grab our pitchfork, and we'll head over to the bin. There are a couple of things I want to show you about the bin before we go into turning the material that will help make it easier for you. The first is that the lid can actually be removed by basically pulling forward on the front lip. It releases it from the two peg hooks on the back. And if you grab the front on both sides and pick it up so it's flat, you can then rotate it and lean it anywhere you like. Now, similarly, to help get better access to the bin, the front is divided into two halves, and you can remove the top half by pulling up and forward, and that frees it. So you can also place that out of the way. Now we have good, clear access to the bin, and we'll bring you in a little bit closer so you can see what the turning actually looks like. So the goal of turning is to do two things. One is to try to essentially flip the pile, where we get the bottom to the top and the inside to the outside. The other is to try to break up the material to make sure that there aren't any clumps. You can do this pretty much any way you like, but the way that I like to do it is to imagine it as a sort of slider puzzle, where we break it up into a 3x3 grid, and we start in one corner, and we pull all of the material to another spot until we get to the very bottom. And you can see our material on the bottom is a little bit darker and richer, because that's where it's more active and retains more of the moisture. Once we are all the way down in our square, and note that I'm tossing the material as well to try to break it up. No need to be gentle with it. Turn it softly. We can go ahead and toss it around. And then we go to our next square in the puzzle. We rake the top of it down onto the hole we just made, and we rake the next spot up on top of it. And we go ahead and go around and do that in a full circle until we've turned the whole pile, which I will speed through so you can see it more quickly. In the meantime, I'll mention a few things to pay attention to. First, there's a layer of hardware cloth at the bottom of all of these bins, which is essentially a 1/2-inch tight wire grid that's there to prevent pests from digging underneath the bin and getting into the pile. It's important when turning that you do get all the way down to the bottom, but make sure that you don't stab the fork into it and then pry. If you do, the fork tines will pass through that mesh, and prying on it will apply a lot of force, which can damage both the wire and the pitchfork. Instead, move the heavy material above first, and then just use a raking or scraping motion when you're near the bottom. Similarly, it's best to avoid using the sides of the bin for leverage when digging into the pile. The frame is actually a fairly light design, so instead, just work with smaller amounts of material at a time, like you see here, so that it doesn't require as much force to shift it around. Because you'll be going through the whole pile, it's a good opportunity to keep an eye out for basic things like contamination and general pile health. If you see any prohibited items, or you notice the pile is very dry, wet, or smelly, just send a note to the site lead about it so they can follow up if needed. And you can see here in the core, maybe a little bit of steam coming out, and it's a little bit whiter flecks in color. And that is because that is definitely the most active area of the pile. And that is the part that's very important to get broken up and moved around. So now, now that we have everything moved around, we want to go ahead and level it off. Try to get it roughly even so that the next participants who add material have a fresh slate to work with. And you can also get the material off of the fork, sort of bringing it against the existing part of the pile, or use your foot to get those stuck pieces that are very up near the top. You may find that the cable twists around the handle, so just be sure to check it when you're done and spin the fork in the opposite direction. But lastly, you can also wipe it gently in the grass so it looks clean. Now we just need to put things back together and put the pitchfork away. We will start by replacing the front, which works in just the opposite way. Line up the hole with the peg, slide it down and forward, and then we take our lid, being careful not to pinch ourselves. We want to just lay it back down and slide it towards the back. And that's it. Now we can lock it up, put our equipment away. And when we put our tools away, the way I like to do it is to pull up on the rubber portion with one hand and then use the other hand to sort of twist the tool into place and then nudge it down a little bit so it sits securely. And that's it. We can lock it up. And our turning is done. Thanks for watching and happy composting.